السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. In the previous Ramzans, we've been discussing in regards to the biography of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. यानी रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की सीरत के मुताबिक कुछ बयानात और दर्स हुए हैं. At this point now we're in the 5th year after the hijrah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And despite the fact that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has left from Makkah al-Mukarramah, यानी Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ने कुफार को Makkah al-Mukarramah में पीछे छोड़ दिए, लेकिन these people they will not give up on Islam. They want to destroy Islam. They want to wipe Islam off the face of the earth. And so constantly there are battles, there are fights between the Muslims and the Kuffar. It's mentioned a minimum of 66 battles took place between the Kuffar and the Muslims in the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Over 11 years, 66 battles. That's 6 battles each year. यानी हर 2 महीने में जंग होता है between the Kuffar and the Muslims. And they're constantly being persecuted, constantly being pressured by the Kuffar. Now, we mentioned that in Madinatul Munawwara there used to be 3 Jewish tribes. Okay? There were 3 tribes of the Jews in Madinatul Munawwara: the Banu Qaynuqa, the Banu Nadir, and the Banu Qurayza. Because of the betrayal of the Banu Qaynuqa, they were exiled from Madinatul Munawwara. They had to leave. The Banu Nadir as well, they betrayed the Muslims, they broke the peace treaty, as a consequence of which they were also removed from Madinatul Munawwara. Ab ye log kaha gaye the? Where did they go? So it's mentioned that these individuals, they went to Khaybar. Khaybar is north of Madinatul Munawwara. Aur yahan jo Yahud hai, this is where they stay. This is their stronghold. These are their fortresses. When the leaders of Banu Nadir and Banu Qaynuqa, they go into Khaybar, they are welcomed by the Jews and they made leaders. Now slowly these individuals, they start planning and plotting their revenge. कि हम कैसे बदला लेंगे? How will we defeat the Muslims? And in this way, 3 main leaders, Huyay bin Akhtab, Salam ibn Abil Hukayk, and Kinana ibn Rabi, they come from Khaybar with a total of 20 men, 20 leaders, and they go to Makkah al-Mukarramah. जब वो मक्का मुकर्रमा पहुंचते हैं, they go to the Quraysh. In specific, they go to Abu Sufyan, who has not yet accepted Islam. And Abu Sufyan इस वक्त उसने इस्लाम कबूल नहीं किया है और वो Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam का दुश्मन है. When they meet with the Jews, he opens his arms and he welcomes them. Marhaba, marhaba. He says, any enemy of Muhammad is a friend of ours, ma'azallah. And he said, I was waiting for you. मैं सोच रहा था कि कब तुम लोग आओगे? When will you guys come? And so we can defeat our enemy together. So Huyay bin Akhtab, he takes 50 leaders of the Quraysh. They enter into the khilaf of the Kaaba. And he makes them take an oath that they will fight till their very last breath. They will spend the last drop of blood in trying to defeat the Muslims. And so the Kuffar of Quraysh, the leaders of the Quraysh, they agree and they start placing their plans into action. One of the things they do is they approach the tribe called Banu Ghatafan. The Banu Ghatafan, modern day, you can call them mercenaries. They fight if you pay them. So the Jews, they say, we will give you 50% of the proceeds of Khaybar. Uski jitni bhi kheti hai, uska nisf hissa hum aapko denge. We will give to you if you fight on our behalf. And like this, the Kuffar, they reach out to all of the Kuffar in the surrounding areas. And this is why this battle is called Battle of Ahzab. And there's an entire surah in the Quran dedicated to this battle. Because of how important part of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ it is. And this was a battle in which the Kuffar, they all came together, all of the various tribes. And each of them gave horses and camels and soldiers until there was over 10,000 men. And to understand this number, in Madinatul Munawwara, if you included the men, the women, the children, the old people, those who could not even fight, the entire population of Medina was 10,000 people. And these guys had 10,000 just soldiers ready to fight. So Huyay bin Akhtab, Abu Sufyan and the likes, they set off from Makkatul Mukarramah with this army, Confederacy. And their intention is, unki kya niyat hai, that we will enter into Madinatul Munawwara from one side, we will go with our army, we will walk all the way till the opposite side of Madinatul Munawwara, and we will decimate each and every single Muslim. We will wipe Islam off the face of this earth. This is the end of Islam. Yes. Previous to this, they had made many attempts, but they kept failing. Each time, jab bhi koshish ki, every time they were defeated. And the most recent defeat was the second Badr, when they had come out and they thought that the Muslims would run away, but the Muslims came, and instead the Kuffar, they went back home. So time and time again they were defeated. This time they said, we will do a number on the Muslims. This time will be the end. This will be the final time we have to face against the Muslims. So 4 days before Abu Sufyan, he comes out from Makkatul Mukarramah. At that point, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he receives intelligence. He receives information. Khabar milti hai ke kuffar wo aane wale hai. So he consults the companions. Jo sahaba hai, unse Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he has mashwara with them. He says, what's your opinion? Up until this point, the Muslims always went outside of the city to fight. They would never fight inside of the city. And there was war strategy in this, and it was also the zeal of the companions. Lekin is waqt sahaba ko malum tha, they knew that this time we can't go out of the city to fight. There's too many of them, and there's too few of us. One of the companions, his name was Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi, somebody whom you probably have information of and you might know about. We've spoken about him previously as well. He was from Persia. Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi, he mentioned a war strategy. He mentioned a war strategy which was not known to the Arabs. And that was that we will dig a trench outside of Madinatul Munawwara. Now this was very common in other parts of the world. If you look in the books of history, you will find many of the superpowers, whether it was the Byzantines, the Persians, whoever, they used to use this war strategy. But the Arabs, they didn't have no knowledge about this. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he liked this idea, the companions, they liked this idea. So when Sayyidina Salman Farsi suggested this, they began digging this trench. It's mentioned that this trench was dug on the north of the city. Why was it dug on one side of the city? Why not all the way around? Because the city had natural defenses. There was mountains on one side, there was trees, there was houses. If the kuffar tried to attempt to go in through those parts, they would be bottlenecked. And the Muslims could destroy them. There was only one area where they could launch an offensive. 10,000 strong army could enter through. And so they began digging this trench all the way across the north side of Madinatul Munawwara. And all of the companions, young and old, they all participating. Yahan tak ke jo bacche abhi nabalig the, wo bhi hissa lete the. They would participate in this as well. The companions, they were working from Fajr prayer until evening, digging this trench. Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Siddiq and Sayyidina Umar, because they didn't have bags, wo kapre istemal karte, their own clothing they would use to carry the soil in order to get this trench dug. Or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, aapne khud hissa liya. He himself participated in the digging of this trench. Yahan tak ke Seerat ki kitabon mein likha hai कि सर से लेकर पाँव तक Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was covered in dust. He was covered in dust himself, digging this trench. एक वक्त ऐसा हुआ कि Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was in a human form, so he was tired, so he took some rest. And the companions, they said, be quiet. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is resting, let him rest. And the second Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's eye opened, he said to the companions, why did you not wake me up? Why did you not wake me up? This is the time for us to work. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, immediately he stood up and he began to work. And like this, the women, they would bring water, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would recite poetry to encourage the companions. One of the lines of poetry which he recited, which is very famous, he said, Allahumma inna al-aisha aishul akhirah faghfir lil-ansari wal-muhajara. O Allah, indeed the only true life is the life of the hereafter, so forgive the Ansar and the Muhajirin. This is the same poetry that Rasulullah recited when they were digging, when they were making Masjid Nabawi. The same poetry. When the companions, they heard this, they responded, نَحْنُ الَّذِينَ بَايَعُوا مُحَمَّدًا عَلَى الْجِهَادِ مَا بَقِينَا أَبَدًا. We are those people who have taken bay'at with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The bay'ah of jihad. We will fight till our last breath, till our last drop of blood, in order to defend Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And like this, Rasulullah sallallahu would say, وَاللَّهُ لَوْلَا اللَّهُ مَحْتَدَيْنَا وَلَا تَصَدَّقْنَا وَلَا صَلَّيْنَا. By Allah, if not for Allah's bounty, we would have not received salvation, nor given sadaqah, nor performed salah. فَأَنزِلًا سَقِينَةً عَلَيْنَا وَثَبِّتِ الْأَقْدَامَ إِلَّا قَيْنَا. Thus, O Allah, send tranquility upon us and keep us steadfast at the time of confrontation. إِنَّ الْأُولَىٰ قَدْ بَغَوْا عَلَيْنَا إِذَا أَرَادُوا فِتْنَةً أَبَيْنَا. Indeed, they, the disbelievers, have wronged us. Whenever they intended mischief, we rejected it. And these last words, particularly abayna, abayna, they would shout it and they would continue working. And at this time, it was winter time as well. So the ground was very hard. The Muslims had very little provision and supplies. But despite this, the Muslims, they worked day and night to dig this trench. It took them 20 days to complete this trench. And many incidents transpired during this process. One of the things which happened was, one day when Rasulullah had gone to rest, the companions, they were hard at work digging, and they came across one big stone, and they were unable to break it. They all attempted, sabne koshish ki, but none of them would be able to break this stone. So what do? After they've all tried, they go to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they say, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, हमने कोशिश की है, लेकिन हम इस ये जो पत्थर है, we can't do nothing with it. So Rasulullah said, let's go. And when he gets to the stone, he asks for some water. And he takes the water and he places his saliva into the water. Or phir wo jo pani hai, he places it onto the stone. And then he takes the pickaxe. And the narrator of this hadith, Sayyidina Jabir bin Abdullah, he says, when Rasulullah raised the pickaxe, his qameez was lifted. And what did we see? That Rasulullah had some stones tied to his stomach. यानी उस ज़माने में जब भूख की शिद्दत होती तो बंदा की क्या हालत होती है, वो ऐसा हो जाता है ना, he completely falls over. तो वो पत्थर जिस्म पर बांधते, they would place a stone just to stay straight. Meaning Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in a state of extreme hunger. He hadn't eaten for many days. And this stone which all of the companions had attempted to break, they couldn't break. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he takes the pickaxe and he strikes it the first time. And the companions, they say, after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allahu Akbar, one light emitted from the stone as he struck it, and he went in the direction of Yemen. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ne farmaya that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me the keys to Yemen, and I can see the gates of Sana'a. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam struck it a second time. Another light flashed, and this time it went in the direction of the Byzantine Empire, in the direction of Rome. And Rasulullah said, I have been given the keys of Rome, and I can see the red palaces of the Byzantines. And the third time Rasulullah struck the stone and a light flashed towards the lands of Persia. And Rasulullah said, I have been given the keys of Persia, and I can see the white palaces of Madain. And what's beautiful, Rasulullah mentioned all of these words to Sayyidina Salman al-Farsi. And he would be the companion who would see that in the Khilafah of Sayyidina Umar and Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala an, in their leadership, all of these areas, they would come under the control of the Muslims. So when Rasulullah struck the stone for the third time, this stone turned into dust. This was the power given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now there's many people who claim that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was just a normal human being. There was no difference between him and us. And this idea could not be further from the truth. In the same way that a rock is a stone and a diamond is a stone, but you would never exchange a rock for a diamond. In the same way, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a human. We do not neglect this, we do not deny this. Rather, in the Quran Kareem itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to inform the people that he is a man. إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشْرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ يُوحَى إِلَيْهِ. But just like a diamond is not like a rock, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is superior than all of the human beings. He has a maqam which is far surpassed this. After the stone was removed, Sayyidina Jabir radiallahu ta'ala and he narrates, he says, I thought, मैंने सोचा कि Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's so hungry, and हमको कुछ करना चाहिए. So he went back home, वापस घर गए, and he asked his wife, he says to his wife that, do we have anything at home? And she says that we only have 1 sa' of wheat, roughly about 4 kg of wheat, and we have a small goat, a lamb. So she says, if you want to feed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is all that we have. It's up to you, but whatever you do, don't call too many people. Because if too many people come, then we're going to be embarrassed. We won't be able to give them food, and then we will be embarrassed. So at that point, Sayyidina Jabir radiallahu ta'ala, and he goes and he whispers into the ear of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, there's a doubt at my house. Bring 1 or 2 people. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he turns to the entire army and he says to the entire army, there's a dawat at Jabir's house, you are all invited. So Sayyidina Jabir radiallahu ta'ala, he's panicking, he runs back home, he says to his wife, I told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam 1 or 2 people, but he's brought all of them. So she says, did you say to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam 1 or 2 people? He says, yes, I did. Did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam invite the rest of the people? He did. So she says, why are you worrying for? Our job is to feed our guests, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will feed his guests. And you look at the himmah of the women of the Ansar. Yes? Look at how much faith they had in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam arrived, he said to Jabir, tell your wife to not knead the dough yet. Yes? Just wait. And to leave the pot on the fire. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went, he took his blessed saliva, he mixed it into the dough, and he placed it into the pot. And then they called all of the women in the community. It was just a small amount of flour, but Rasulullah said, call all of the women in the community, because you will need help. And then they began to knead the dough and bake the bread. And they're baking the bread and they're serving the food. They're baking the bread, they're serving the food. And like this, they're doing this. And they're feeding the army. And as they're doing this, the food is not diminishing. وَجِتْنَا تَا إِتْنَا هِي هَي أَبِي. Up until this point that they fed 1,000 people like this. From this small amount of food, because of the blessings, the mu'jiza, the miracle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 1,000 people from such a small amount of food. And some of our ulama, they mentioned that even after this, iske baad bhi, kuch din, they continued to eat from this until they did not uncover the cloth. And when they looked inside, then they saw that the food was exactly as it was when they had started. But after this point, because they went against the command of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this food gradually diminished and it came to an end. Likewise, on one occasion, Sayyidina Abdullah bin Rawaha, his niece, she came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with some dates, some khujur. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, what have you got? She said, I brought some dates, Ya Rasulullah, for my uncle and my father. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took them. He covered them with a cloth and he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he called all of the companions, come and eat. And all of the companions, they would place their hands inside and they would take the dates and they would eat until all of them were satisfied. And when they removed the cloth, they were exactly as they were at the beginning. Another miracle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in this manner, there were many miracles which occurred during this battle. And in this manner, the companions, through extreme difficulty, slowly but surely, they were able to complete the building of this trench. As Abu Sufyan had left the army, they approached Madinatul Munawwara, and roughly after 6 days, they arrived outside of Madinatul Munawwara. What do they see? They see a trench in front of them. They had never experienced this before. They had never seen anything like this before. So they don't know what to do. They go to the right, they go to the left. They're trying to figure out a way to get across, but they have no idea. They're 10,000 strong, but they have no way to get across. And one thing which is important to know, when we hear about these stories and we look back on the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's easy for us to sit here and think, oh well, the companions, they were promised victory by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it was easy for them. What's the difficulty in this? They had the support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the Quran Kareem itself mentions the situation of the companions. Allah says, remember, when they came at you from the east and the west, when your eyes grew wild in horror and your hearts jumped into their throats. You know, when you're really scared and your heart comes like this and it feels like it's in your throat. And you entertain conflicting thoughts about Allah. Then and there the believers were put to test and were violently shaken. Meaning, at this point, when the Muslims, they saw 10,000 strong army in front of them, it must have looked like an ocean of people. The Muslims, they were frightened. You know, what's going to happen? The Muslims only had 3,000 soldiers. They were outnumbered 3-1. And the Kuffar, they had horses and camels and cavalry, everything. They tried to cross the trench, but they were unable to do so. So Huyay bin Akhtab, what does he do? He devises a second strategy. He sneaks over to the Banu Qurayza, the final Jewish tribe in Madinatul Munawwara. And he says to the leader, he knocks on the door, Ka'b ibn al-Asad. But he knows why he has come. As soon as he hears, he doesn't open the door. He knows exactly why he has come. He says, woe unto you, may you be destroyed. Why have you come here? Your tribe has been destroyed, you're going to destroy our tribe as well. And he keeps knocking and he keeps knocking and he says, come out, come out. You know how many people are here to support us, but Ka'b is not listening. So Huyay is very smart. He says, the only reason you're not opening the door is because you don't want to share your food with me. He knows exactly where to hit him. He knows where it hurts. So now Ka'b, his pride has come into play. So he opens up the door. He sits with him and he eats with him, and slowly, slowly he's convincing him. He's telling him, look, come with us, join our side. We're 10,000 strong. Very soon we're going to enter into Madinatul Munawwara. If we have your support from inside, then we will be unstoppable. And slowly, slowly Ka'b, he's convinced, and eventually he agrees on one condition. He says, if you are defeated and you have to run away, you have to take us with you, you have to support us. You must support us with your army, because if you leave, we will be left behind. So Huyay, he's thinking there's no way we're going to be defeated. He's so confident. He says, of course, don't worry about it. We will support you. And then he goes and he informs Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan, he is, you can't imagine how happy he is. And Abu Sufyan, when he gets this information, he rallies his troops. Now Ka'b ibn Asad, when they hear that he has broken the treaty, the Muslims, they go to meet him to try and convince him. And this is very important that you know this part of the seerah especially, because the atheists, what happens later with the Banu Qurayza, this is one of the major fingers they point at the Muslims. And the majority of Muslims do not know how to respond. Later, because of the treachery of the Banu Qurayza, 700 of their men are executed. And the atheists, time and time again, they bring this incident up, and we are so ignorant, we don't know how to respond. Because we don't know the history of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you know, some of these stories you will have heard 100 times. The story of Sayyidina Jabir bin Abdullah, the story of the rock. But these types of stories we don't know about, because our ulama, they don't explain these kinds of things to us. Yeah? Many a times they say these stories, the miracles, we say wah wah and we go home. And then when we are confronted with these types of situations, then we have to sit on our hands. Yes? So it's very important you understand how Banu Qurayza, they betrayed the Muslims, how they broke the peace treaty. You know, when they went to them and they said, we have a peace treaty and we've renewed it twice. You know what the Banu Qurayza, they said? They said, who is Muhammad? We don't even know him. We don't have no peace treaty with him. So they broke the covenant that they had with the Muslims. And then they started providing weaponry. They started providing supplies. And not only this, they began to prepare an army to attack from inside. And one of the worst things which they did, which I will mention tomorrow, is they sent men to where the women of the Muslims were located. And they tried to attack them when there were no soldiers present. So this is the situation. And this is where I'm going to stop, inshaAllah ta'ala. 10,000 strong army outside of Madinatul Munawwara. The Banu Qurayza have broken the treaty and they are ready to attack from inside of Madinatul Munawwara. The companions, they have little food and little supplies. They are outnumbered. But in this situation, they are still stood by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they are waiting the support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Insha'Allah, we will continue with this tomorrow if Allah gives us the ability. Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that through His infinite mercy, He forgives us for all our major and minor sins. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us to worship in abundance in this blessed month of Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to seek the knowledge of the religion. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to hold fast to the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the fitan of this time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us death upon iman. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala khayri khalqihi wa nuri arshi Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Ya rahmatika ya arhamar